Hello, everybody. Welcome to We Give Summit Day 2. I don't know about you, but these sessions have all been so inspiring, and today's session on giving outside the box will be no less inspirational, I'm sure. In fact, I think it won't just be inspirational, it'll actually show you some real ways that you can take some of these lessons back into your own giving circles and other kinds of collective giving groups. A reminder to enable closed captioning. If you want to, click the little CC button on the bottom. Today's session, as I said, is Give Outside the Box. We'll be looking at models of directly giving to individuals, CDFIs, and 501c4. So if you don't know what any of those letters and acronyms stand for, you are in the right place, and we'll hear all about it from 3 amazing speakers. My name is Isis Krause. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Philanthropy Together, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Moderating, I'm stepping in for Kelsey Barowich. Today, we are going to be looking at ways to give outside the box, as the session sounds. I think so many folks do this kind of giving in their collective giving groups, and they just default to giving to 501c3s, and that's totally fine. Giving to normal, standard nonprofits are amazing. They are the lifeblood of so much work happening on the ground in the social change ecosystem. But today, we're going to give outside the box and look a little bit beyond. A reminder, at the close of our session, we'll have a quick 2-question poll, so please stay on for that. And also, we'll have a raffle, for somebody to win a book at the end of this session if you stay on. So I hope you do. So to start, we're going to dive right in. We have 3 incredible panelists today looking at each of those models. We have Maria Rodriguez from the Valiente Fund. We have Mindy Freedman from the SAM Initiative, and Maria Dautruche from the Awesome Foundation. Each of them will be sharing a unique model in how to give outside the box, and I'm excited to welcome each of them to the stage. Up first, we have Maria Dautruche from Awesome Foundation. Awesome Foundation has been a partner of ours for many, many years since Philanthropy Together got started, and I've always been a huge fan of their model of not just giving to nonprofits, but really thinking differently about how far our money can go and where our money can go. So Maria, welcome to the stage. We'd love to turn it over to you and hear a little bit more about your model, and hopefully to inspire some folks on this call to maybe give a little differently.
Thank you so much, Isis, and thank you to Philanthropy Together for inviting us and having me on this panel. Must give a shout out to all of my fellow Awesome Foundation New York City chapter trustees, including Melanie Call, who was really spearheading and coalescing all of us to get a proposal in, and she is unable to join us here. And so what do we know about collective giving? We know that it takes a collective of people. And one of the great things about that is if you are unable to do something individually, the collective kicks in. So to start off about the Awesome Foundation, if you are unaware, this is basically it in a nutshell, right? If you remember nothing else about what the Awesome Foundation is, here are the key points, right? We give away $1,000 a month. No strings attached to how we give that away. You just get it. Don't send us reports. Don't just here's your money. And it's by neighbors for neighbors, right? So the Awesome chapter that I'm in is a New York City chapter. All of the trustees and decision makers about how that money gets allocated are New Yorkers, and all of the applicants are New Yorkers doing awesome projects in New York City. And one of my favorite things about the Awesome Foundation, if you haven't figured it out yet, is that we hope that the projects we are funding are awesome. And what's interesting about that is it feels to me as a trustee that every month that metric of what is awesome is relative to what we're looking at. And also in this idea of collective giving, it's created from our collective imagination of what feels awesome at that time in that meeting with that batch of proposals. So sometimes something awesome is some community organizing, some work around housing justice. Sometimes what's awesome is something much more whimsical, like having a water balloon fight in your neighborhood park. So that's the Awesome Foundation NYC in a nutshell. The next slide, I'll give you a few more nuts and bolts about giving you some information by the numbers. So our chapter, and I'm going to get more into why I'm referring to the New York City chapter of the Awesome Foundation. Our chapter is about 8 to 12 trustees. 12 would be awesome. 10 really keeps the balls moving. We get about 80 to 140 applications every month. In the past few months, and I'll be honest, I think coming through the pandemic and into this current time, we're looking at about 150, 160 applicants a month. The grant size, as we said, $1,000. And how we get there is each of the trustees funds it, right? We each put in about $100 and we get to this grant size. 12 grants per year. So we're doing this every month, right? And the impact, what happened? So far, the New York City chapter has funded 157 projects, totaling $157,000. And I keep talking about the chapter, but the Awesome Foundation is a global, worldwide movement made up of about 73 chapters in 8 countries around the planet. And from its humble beginnings on a hot summer day in Boston in 2009, we can see that the impact is over nearly $7 million, right? $6,774,000 given globally, supporting 6,774 projects. And those chapters can just be like vegan, worldwide vegan, or they could be, place-based, like how New York City is a chapter. We've got some other chapters, Pittsburgh. I don't know if you're in the house. I don't know, maybe say in the chat if you are in a city and you know that there's an Awesome Foundation nearby. You might be familiar that way as well. So we can go to the next slide. Here's a great article that was in the New York Times in 2015, actually written by one of our Awesome Foundation NYC trustees. Not going to keep you here long, just want to pull out a few key things because the nuts and bolts in it of how we do this is actually answered in this in pieces of this article. So the questions on our applications: who are you? What's your awesome idea? How will you use this money? That's it. We're a bunch of volunteers. We're a bunch of everyday folks. We get 160 applications a month. We don't really want to read a lot of unnecessary information. This is all we need to make a decision most of the time. And so in addition to getting those answers, oftentimes there might be some video clip that is shared. There might be some photo of some work that's shared, but this is really all we need to get to the heart of. Who are you? What's your awesome idea? How will you use this money? And the grant applications, both winners and losers, applaud this chapter for being a corrective to the silicon heavy, happy notion that awesome ideas need to be about monetized scalability. We don't care if you can do it again. We don't care if you're going to get 3,000 other people to join you. You said you're going to have a community pop-up dinner. Go forth and buy the food, man. Good luck, right? And in a world where a person can score $55,492 on Kickstarter just for making potato salad, I'd love to see that Kickstarter, a $1,000 prize draws a specific New Yorker out of the woodwork. And that we're drawing out our artists, our activists, our advocates, the people who are like, if you just gave me this much, I could do something that I think would make a difference. So in addition to just funding ideas that sound amazing. I don't want to keep overusing the word awesome, which is a bad habit of mine when talking about this work. We're also telling people we see you, and here's some money to support what you are setting out to do in the world. So we can go to the next slide. And I see in the chat, folks are shouting out their local chapters. So that's awesome. So some of the things we funded, just to give you a sense of, this is really what the work is about, right? It's about addressing indie book deserts in the Bronx, which is the part of New York where I live. For a while, the story was, there's only one bookstore in the Bronx. And I remember when Barnes and Nobles closed. And so having the Lit Bar now is great. But, communities need books, and the Bronx is a pretty thorough borough. So we supported this mobile book initiative, this project called Bronx Bound Books. Also, technology for housing justice, community making with this Bronx Poetry Slam. I promise we do more than just in the Bronx, but hey, I'm from the Bronx and I'm here. So we can move on to the next slide and get a sense of some other things. Another thing, origami vending machine. Now, this was just an artist. He had already made this thing, and it looks like a machine that you can go and choose to get an origami sculpture from, a paper sculpture from. He is actually in the machine making the origami all day. And so he had asked us for some money to make a second one and take it out on the road. And we thought it was pretty cool. Talk to Me Borough Network was an opportunity for having folks go up and connect throughout their boroughs. And here you just see different things. So sometimes we are funding individual artists, right? Like maybe Origami Vending Machine wasn't going to get, an artist residency or wasn't going to get money to try this out. And that's something else about the work that we are funding. We often are giving people the support to try something, to experiment. I don't know how many people were here to hear the great Deepa speak this morning about roles in the movement. Sometimes you don't only need the space to experiment or the wherewithal, you actually do need some resources. And so we're really proud to be able to give that to folks, and also to bring more community into spaces where, I had the opportunity to hear about the session earlier today as part of the summit. Shaylin was talking about people just coming out and being able to have community and build trust. And I think Vanessa Elias was also talking about that. And we're able to fund some of that. Yes, it could be absolutely free, but you know what? Speaking for myself, I'm not inviting anyone over to my house in my neighborhood. I live in a small 2-bedroom Bronx apartment. There's not space for a bridge game up in here. So it is great to be able to support third spaces and to support community spaces outside, because we do know those things often come at a premium. Next slide, please. And you can, of course, go to our website and see information about the things that we have funded over the years. So please do check that out on the Awesome Foundation NYC's website. This is one of my favorite stories from Awesome Foundation, talking about just our impact. The Tubman stamp. I don't know if anyone remembers when there was all this talk about putting Harriet Tubman's face on the $20 bill here in the United States and, removing Andrew Jackson. It totally got stalled, right? A certain administration came around and said, we'll do that later. So it got stalled to 2028. And in response to that stall, in response to it being announced it was going to happen and then not happening, there was this guy, a 3D graphic designer and artist. His name's Daniel Wall, and he made a stamp. And you could just put it over the stamp and continue to use your regularly issued $20 bills. And he submitted a proposal to the Awesome Foundation to get this stamp made in mass and make all these stamps and sell them. So here you see we're supporting entrepreneurship. We're also supporting some direct response to some advocacy, right? One of the things that Dano said is that in this interview that you can't really click on here, but it's a great interview. I'll find the link and share it later. Is that currency is so ubiquitous that it really does hold some power in the public sphere. So sometimes people would notice this isn't a regular 20, and it would spark a conversation. And sometimes they wouldn't, and that's fine. The impact of that, though, is really what I want to close on. We gave Dano $1,000. Dano made the stamp. Dano sold the stamp. Dano made about $40,000 selling the stamp, which he then turned around and used to give micro grants to other entrepreneurs and creatives. Years later, not too long later, actually, Dano joins the Awesome Foundation New York City chapter as a trustee. Dano is a committed and amazing trustee, has a very different perspective on what is awesome than what I do. So I love talking with Dano in meetings about how we're going to decide if this is awesome or not. And I think that's what I'll leave you with, that you never know where it's going to go. We're open to being surprised by the ripple effects of what we fund, but we don't require people to report back to us and prove that it was worth the investment. And so we're able to support individuals, we're able to support advocacy, we're able to support artists and activists, and it's just amazing to see the range. And that brings me back to the real reason I joined the Awesome Foundation when I did, is because what could be awesome? Not just to me, but for a huge diverse city like New York City. And so I love that our collective giving is also an opportunity to practice collective imagination. And if you'd like to follow us and like to learn more about us, here are some ways to do that. I will release my time, and thank you so much for having me to talk about the Awesome Foundation in New York City for a little bit.
Maria, that was incredible. I don't know about you, but the question I'm holding is, how do I bring more awesome into my everyday giving and work and the circles I'm a part of? So thank you for that provocation. The two other things I really loved is we often see people talk about, oh, I need to scale my grant making. I want to be able to give more and more and more. And I really came away with like, how do we scale our creativity and thinking outside the box and not just equating more money with equaling more impact or more, always being better. So thank you for grounding us in that. A follow-up question I have for you that I think many people often ask around giving money directly to individuals is the how. How do I actually give people that money? And I was just with some of your trustees in New York at one of our Circle Up events, and he was sharing a horror story that I think you used to slide money in a paper bag late at night, over a bar to another person. So curious how you all go about actually giving the money.
Yes, that is an actual way that you can give people money. In case you're not sure, you can put it in a bag, meet them at a bar, and give it to them. It is that simple. So one thing I just want to name, which may not have come across real clear, is we're not doing this for the charitable tax benefits, right? That's really not what this is set up for. We literally, at this point, send via some mobile app, right? Our treasurer some money. And then when we announce who the grantee is, we connect that person to our treasurer and say, we are now going to send you money. Please take it. Have a nice day. I hope this is the best way to send it to you. Every once in a while, someone says, please cut me a check, or I don't have that, that happens. But no, I think, I have the little, credential. If you're looking at my name, CAP, it's a chartered advisor in philanthropy. I've worked in nonprofits for a long time. I don't anymore, but I have about 20 years experience working in nonprofits. And that's something I think we're used to hearing funders say, traditional grant making institutions. Oh, it's just so hard to move this money. And that's because they've set up a lot of hoops and scoops around doing that. And that's their issue. We as individual people, we in collective giving, it doesn't have to be that hard. It's really, to go back to the original, it's as easy as giving someone money and bless and release. I hope this does you well, and walk away, right? It's as easy as that. And I think mutual aid has taught us that. I think growing up, when I think of my own cultural traditions, susus teach me that. If you don't know what a susu is, happy to drop that in the chat too. Giving circles, like, it is actually easy to give. Easy. And for me, I'll be really honest, I live in New York in my small 2-bedroom apartment. This is an important point for me to make. I do not consider myself wealthy, and I promise you, my tax guy doesn't either, right? But I budget for this. It's $100 a month, and it's important to me. So I just set it aside, and I don't even think about it. And that's a privilege. I'm grateful for that. But it is accessible to give and not need a tax write-off. It is accessible to give. It actually makes the giving easier when you want to do it and find the easiest way for you to do it.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Maria, and bringing susus into the room. We talk about this all the time at Philanthropy Together, that giving circles in this era of collective giving is not new. It is not American. It wasn't created 5 years ago. This goes back centuries and centuries, and it's really rooted in practices of communal caretaking. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. And to all of the other giving circles and groups out there, consider having an awesome component of your own group, right? You can still do your normal grant making through your normal channels and still be able to give these $1,000 in the Awesome Foundation model. So I hope you connect with Maria to be able to do so. Next up, we have another Maria joining us, Maria Rodriguez from Valiente Fund. Valiente Fund is a collaborative fund, a donor and funder collaborative as part of the Way to Rise initiative that is unleashing the beautiful and full potential of Latine change agents. I'm so thrilled to be talking with you. Philanthropy Together has been doing lots of work with collaborative funds as well as giving circles in the last few years, and I'm just thrilled to be able to hear more about your model. Maria, as a sneak preview, will be sharing what the heck is this acronym of 501c4? Why is it important? Why is it useful? How can different kinds of change happen by giving in that way? So Maria, take it away.
Thank you, Isis, for your work and your leadership and the invitation to share a little bit about the Valiente Fund and Valiente Action Fund, both of which live in Way to Way and Way to Rise, credible, kick-ass collaborative that is bold and ambitious. Valiente is working on 3 aspects: the consciousness of leaders, the capacity of organizations, and the connectivity of movements. And we're doing a couple experiments with acceleration. The C4 is also digging into reproductive freedoms and fighting some of the xenophobic status threat attacks. Today, in my 6 minutes, I will share 3 assumptions and a few considerations as you think about C3 and C4 giving, which are US IRS statuses. The C3 is charitable giving that you all know, and the C4 is essentially 51% has to be charitable giving, what we call C3 allowable. There's unlimited ability to lobby, and there's opportunity or capacity to do some electioneering. So let's go into the assumptions. The assumptions around wanting to do C4 is first that we want big change. We want change and we want it big. And now we can't afford just to relieve people's pain. We need to really get radical. And by radical, I don't mean militant or troublemaking. I mean, get to the root causes. So instead of addressing symptoms, we're wanting to look at systems. So that's part of the approach and the understanding as we lean into. Maybe you are one person, one starfish at a time, and that's great. But given some of us level of privilege, not all of us, we can do more. So the second assumption is we have a theory of change, and that's something for you to consider as you're developing your strategy. What is your theory of change, and how do you think change happens? Part of those elements are, what's your understanding of power? Who has it? Who yields it? How to build it? And who are the change agents? Trust-based philanthropy, as Maria so beautifully, creatively, and inspiringly laid out, is based in that the folks most directly affected can know what they need and know the systems and the responses that would improve their lives. So the second assumption is really getting a little bit more rigorous around theories of change, and our couple accelerators are bringing some of that rigor to that. The third assumption around C4 giving is that there's an ecosystem approach, meaning this status, this IRS status is not sacred, it's not holy, it's not super special, it's just an IRS code. What we need to understand is it takes all of us, it takes folks working at their highest level, and we have 3 dimensions of that ecosystem approach. The people, which is a lot of the social movement related to the C3, the policy, which often we lean into the C4 to maximize the impact, and 3, the politics, which oftentimes you might need a 527 or a PAC, a political action committee. So this ecosystem approach really helps. And actually, I want to add that sometimes, and we're experimenting in different formations to support limited liability corporations, because many times industry and business is part of making that change. And we do that also to do some independent revenue generation so that the organizations can more fully access the capacities that they need. So those are the 3 assumptions. I'm glad to go a little bit deeper on it. As Tori Gavito, the president of Way to Win, says, the C4s enable a full expression of a community's voice and a clear articulation of its priorities. It really just gives more space, more capacity, as I said, with lobbying and legislation, and to a certain degree with electioneering. As philanthropists, we might need to create structures to be able to fund the C4 if necessary, or leverage intermediaries. I want to end with 3 considerations. One is, let's not be naive that those that are working on the other side of our issues, unfortunately, they exist, and they're engaging in politics in ways that undermine the impact of our giving. So inertia and not seizing the full toolbox really puts us at a disadvantage. A 2016 independent sector poll found that close to 80% of voters support a bigger role for the charitable sector in working with the government to produce more effective and efficient solutions to problems. So people understand that the social movements, the third sectors, have a lot to contribute, driven by people. The second thing is, we don't have to be we can be bold and ambitious, but we can start small, start local, leverage short-term opportunities. Incrementalism is the way that most of the change in this country has happened. And the local, state, or federal are different arenas to impact. So that's another consideration. And finally, leverage intermediaries. If you feel like you don't have the ear to the ground the way that intermediaries can contribute, or that you are more risk averse or want to shield yourself from visibility or liability, leverage the intermediaries that exist exactly to bring some cohesion to these strategies. So I'd love to be in communication and community with any of you. I hope that the links for Valiente have been put in the chat, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Maria. That was incredible. And I think very illuminating for everybody here around not just seeing these words out there of a 501c4, but really getting at the sort of fundamental components of why that kind of ecosystem root cause level change, how that can happen, and how 501c4s can have impact there. I'd love to hear if you can just take it down to the total grassroots, right? You kept it at the beautiful 10,000 foot level. If you're at the 1,000 foot level, what does this actually, or the 100 foot level, what does this actually look like? Can you give one example of what this looks like in practice, where somebody's 501c4 funds might go and the kind of change that can happen?
Well, the possibilities are limitless as we have so many battles ahead of us, but I'm relatively new to grant making. I was actually part of both immigrant rights and racial justice and democracy movements. And I'll give you just a brief example. The scholarship fund that approached us about an undocumented student not being able to access college. And we turned an individual problem, recognizing that it's not an individual problem, it's a systemic problem. And it did take 11 years, Isis, but in a very harsh terrain, we were able to pass policy that created access to college with an in-state tuition program. Similarly, rental assistance that goes from the rental assistance individual to the building of a housing cooperative in Northern Virginia that required a level of lobbying and political engagement. We know that fights like gun control and immigration reform, poll after poll, show that voters support these policy changes. And for decades now, but yet whether it's the sausage making or the electoral machines don't allow us for the true reflection of the people's will. That's why we have to muscle up to use all the tools in our tool chest.
Thank you so much for sharing, Maria. And to all of the groups on the call, I hope you're inspired to consider getting into the 501c4 advocacy game with Maria, either giving through collaboratives and intermediaries like the Valiente Fund, or including that kind of 501c4 giving alongside the direct giving that Maria was talking about as well. Thanks, Maria. And last but certainly not least, we have Mindy Freedman from the SAM Initiative here in Los Angeles, my backyard as well. They are a giving circle and group that's been around since 2013, have mobilized more than $3 million towards women and girls and other causes here in the city. And they keep innovating on the work that they're doing. And so Mindy's here to share about one of their most recent sort of efforts and ways of making change here in LA and all around. So Mindy, turning it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Isis, and the We Give Summit for including me in this interesting conversation. And Maria, I just really enjoyed learning about your innovative approaches also to give outside the box. So I'm here to share the story of how at the SAM Initiative, we stretched philanthropy beyond traditional giving. Before we get started, I want to plant a seed No matter what sustainability means to you, how do you think about sustainability in your giving? Today, I'm going to talk about what sustainability looks like and how it's grown for Sam. My goal, overall, my goal in this session is to inspire our shared understanding of what's possible in the space of collective giving, and to promote giving that is nurturing and supports sustainability and entrepreneurship, and really helping people help themselves. I believe we can give in a way that expands philanthropy to meet changing needs of communities and supports sustainable social change for individuals and organizations towards less dependency and a more empowered future. Personally, having run a giving circle for almost a dozen years, I'm seeing this tremendous need, and I'm committed to demonstrating to donors and philanthropists alike that we can stretch to give beyond traditional grants and make more of a sustainable difference. There's a great need to unlock philanthropic capital in new ways, and we are in a position to really make this happen. Here's a little bit of background. I founded the SAM Initiative in 2013 as a traditional giving circle focused on grants. Our mission is to improve the lives of women, children, and families in LA through engaged philanthropy. We do this through education around the needs of the community, being nimble and responsive to those needs. It's natural for us to look for ways to stretch our philanthropy beyond traditional giving, and here's how it played out for us. First, through educating our members and giving to social enterprises, then working with CDFIs and microloans, creating recoverable grants, and now a new entity, which I'll share more about. So first, social enterprise. I just want to make sure the slides are up, right?
No, they're not up. I wanted to interrupt and offer, Michelle, do you need support in sharing the slides? Okay, there they are.
Oh, no. Okay. So, all right. So first, social enterprise. Thank you. I was noticing that. Thank you. In 2016, I'm sorry, you guys missed my slides. So first, in social enterprise, in 2016, SAM started allocating some of our giving to social enterprises. These are nonprofits with income generating programs where revenues are invested back into those they serve. An example, as you see in the slide, is Downtown Women's Center. They support homeless women and their families, and they have 3 businesses that generate revenue. There's a retail clothing, there's a cafe, and candle and soap making. Women are trained with job skills and wages so that they can work in the community. Every year since 2016, we introduce a social enterprise to our members alongside our traditional giving, which fosters continued learning and awareness in the field. Next slide, please. SAM took another step in stretching our giving. We recognized a great need for access to capital to help alleviate poverty, and we discovered CDFIs, which are also social enterprises. So what are CDFIs? These are community development financial institutions that are mission-based. They provide funding and services to support entrepreneurs with their businesses. We saw an opportunity here to invest in CDFIs, and they would then invest in microloan funds for underserved women entrepreneurs. So what is a microloan? These are lowest interest loans of $500 to $2,500 and even up to $20,000. This was a chance to provide access to capital to women who are not bankable and don't have a means to grow their business. An example here is Merced Cortez. She's a street vendor. She takes care of her children and her parents, and she has a strong desire to be self-reliant. She is unbankable. She has no access or credit history, and the alternatives for her are predatory, which can be up to 40% in interest. So Merced, through one of these microloan funds, got a $2,500 loan. She was able to increase her sales. She paid the loan back and then was able to get a bigger loan. So microloans are a growing industry in the US. And just so you know, SAM did not manage these funds. This was the role of the experts, the CDFIs, which report a 99% repayment rate. They are typically set up so that the funds get recycled and every loan paid goes back out into the community. Next slide, please. Through our giving to microloans, not only did we stretch into a new area, the CDFIs also stretched with us. They agreed to set up as part of our giving to be returned as a recoverable grant. That means a recoverable grant means that some of our grant would actually come back to us. This helped SAM stretch our own model of sustainability. So as microloans get repaid, money will come back to SAM to use towards operations or as an opportunity to redeploy these funds back into the community. Next slide. Is that right? Finally, our most recent innovation in stretching beyond traditional giving, the launch of the Moss Impact Fund, which was born out of the success of the cycle that I just described. Moss is designed to demonstrate and educate donors that we can stretch beyond traditional grant making. It's an investment vehicle that raises and deploys philanthropic capital to invest in entrepreneurship. This provides individuals and organizations an opportunity to help themselves towards a sustainable future. With Moss, we can invest in CDFIs that support underserved entrepreneurs. We can invest in social enterprises and help them expand revenue streams or even create new ones. And we are even talking about creating loan funds to some of our SAM past grant recipients that received entrepreneurial training. So right now, Moss is generating a lot of momentum. We've raised our funds and continue to invest in entrepreneurs while working with experts in the field. Next slide. So some final takeaways. For me as a leader, I feel a responsibility to take a risk. It requires us to look outside the box in order to move more philanthropic dollars to the greatest need. There have been some very positive outcomes as we've stretched our giving and our mindset, and there also have been some challenges too. We're seeing that what we are creating is so small for what the need is, and which is why we need to keep educating donors and stretching. There is a space for traditional giving, and it will likely continue, but we are creating a new relationship with giving that's nurturing and supports individual empowerment and entrepreneurship. Overall, we must continue demonstrating to donors and philanthropists that we can stretch to give beyond traditional grants and make more of a sustainable difference. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy, so much. I just love how I think what you're pushing us all to think through is not just resting on our laurels and saying, oh, we're doing so great in the community, but really thinking 2 steps ahead. What's the next way that we can keep pushing to have more impact? I'd love for you to share, because I know there's groups here who run their own groups, their own giving circles, their own collective giving practices. What were the first 2 steps you took as SAM to actually set up that beautiful diagram where the money started flowing to the CDFIs? How did you actually go about doing that? What was one of the first few steps that you took to make it tangible for folks?
You mean to start our giving in that direction?
Yeah, if somebody else wanted to take this model up and do it themselves, how would they go about starting?
Yes. Well, the first thing, which is what we've been doing for a while, is educating. When we started in 2016 about social enterprises, but educating our donors along the way about this model of creating access to capital so that individuals and organizations can have a means to sustain themselves. So that was really, it's been a theme. It's a big part of my background too, but it's really a theme that we have. And there are not a lot of organizations that have means to that kind of capital for themselves or for those that they serve. So we found the CDFIs and just in that they are here, they are those mission-based organizations, and they're providing not only the funding, like I mentioned, but also services. So investing in them and working with them to create these loan funds. I mean, they are the experts in the field. They're on the ground. They know what they're doing. And really moving also more towards the trust base, that they will manage it. And it's a lot of it is character based as well. So we embrace that as well. So I would say that's the first step, is to find the CDFIs in your area and find out what their needs are. Do they have microloan funds? Who's doing it? And what communities? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I'd love to bring Maria back to the stage. We have about 5 minutes left for questions from the group. So please start putting those in the chat and I'll do my best to moderate them. Looks like Carmen is asking, Mindy, what is the total current amount of capital that is given annually by SAM totally across all its programs? And what are your funding goals moving forward?
Right. So we're on a cycle basis. So last cycle, we have our traditional giving in the fall, and our spring is more towards social enterprise. And this is not including the new Moss Impact Fund. And we gave around $300,000 total. And we also leveraged with some partners in the microloan fund. We had a donor give an additional 100,000. So we try to track our inspired giving. So we've given total since 2016, just over almost $3.5 million.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
While questions are coming in, Maria D, I'd love to ask you, you shared that, what you think is awesome is different from what some of the other trustees think are awesome. And that's often a question we get in these collective giving spaces of all scales, whether you're giving $1,000 or $10 million. It's how do you come together and have that kind of shared discussion and decision-making, and sometimes change each other's minds around, in this case, what is awesome. I'd love to hear from you any best practices or tips that you have for how folks can engage in that kind of mutual discussion.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's one of my favorite parts of being an awesome foundation trustee, is getting involved in these conversations. And so, there are some things culturally here in the United States that we shy away from. Having an agenda, conflict, disagreement, deliberation. These are the things I would hope most C3 nonprofit boards are doing, because this is governance, right? This is part of the governance, is I care about this and I'm willing to advocate my point. I will do the heavy lift. I want to hear what you have to say. I didn't think of it that way. I think we still disagree. Is there anything else we could do? And then, we have a pretty transparent voting system. So, basically, let me go back to the way our meetings are structured, because that will offer some how do you do it? So our meetings are structured such that today, and this is not how it's always been, but in the recent couple of rounds, we've had readers, and our readers volunteer to really take the first crack at those 160 applications. And then the readers will vote for what they think is awesome, keeping in mind that the collective might think differently than they do, right? So there are a couple things that we know, I know Dano has a just soft spot for I'm gonna go out into the community and just make something beautiful. Dano loves, the children want to do something. And I'm always is it the children or an adult write this? So keeping in mind that there are gonna be other things other folks find awesome, making notes into our system. We have a web-based platform. And then the meetings are about deliberation. That's really what we're coming together every month to deliberate, because like I said earlier, the giving part is easy. The meetings, the meat of the meetings is deliberation. Why did you think this was awesome? What about it was awesome? Go back in our notes. We keep notes. So 3 months ago, when we had a project like that, you didn't think it was awesome. What happened to you over the past 3 months? Why is this awesome now? Right. And so we do that and we deliberate. And so what's happening is not only this collective idea of what is awesome that month. That's how you build relationships with people. I don't know anyone else personally on the awesome trustee board, right? But I know what they think is cool now, because we come together every month and figure that out. So I think the long and short of it is, don't be afraid to have your agenda, to speak up and advocate for what you think, and then also keep those ears open. We've got 2 of these and 1 of these, right? So keep those ears open on what is happening around me. No one should be coerced by the loudest person in the room. But we should really be open to building a culture that cultivates community so that when other people ask us, well, why was this awesome this month? Any one of us can have an answer, whether we agreed with that at the onset or not. Another thing I'll say is we vote twice. We vote on the ones that end up being in the meeting, and then we do follow-up with the finalists. We reach out to them. We bring any big questions that the group brought up, like, are you really going to use this $1,000 for that? Or how does this fall into the larger picture of what you're trying to do? Or do you have an end goal? Is this just to be cool for a day? So we follow up and do that work, and then we do a write-up, share that with the group, and then we vote again. Right? So there are some like technical, here's our process, but the big thing of it is like, we agreed to show up and advocate and argue and deliberate. And argue means get clear. It doesn't mean come to fight. It means we want to get really clear on what's going to be the best application this month.
Thank you for sharing that. And for everyone who hasn't yet read our recent research on collective giving as a whole movement, it's at http://collective.giving. And that has a whole section on practicing these soft skills of democracy that you're talking about, Maria, and how collective giving is enabling that. So thank you for sharing. Maria R., I'd love to take Maggie's question to you. How do you build a closer community with the groups that you fund once you fund them, or make the loan, or in your case, the C4 gift?
Yeah, the investment. So both C3 and C4 right now, we're building accelerators, which means we don't just give them money, but we're scaffolding them with capacity building. One of the theories of change is that one of the reasons why Latina organizations get less than 2% of philanthropic dollars, one way to respond to that is to shore up their operational capacity, especially for emerging groups between the years of 3 and 5, where they either flourish or flounder. And so we built a cohort to support the operational strengthening for these groups so that they would be in a better position to go to scale, take risk, be bold, and receive greater amount of money. Similarly, on the C4 side, the media cohort is receiving tech tools and other investments that help them build their audience and their reach. So we're in very close relationship with our grantees. And there's other ways, advisory bodies, visits, one-on-ones, and the fact that so much of the Way to Rise, Way to Win team really comes from social movement organizations.
Thank you, Maria and Mindy, for all of your words of wisdom this session. I hope that every single person here today takes back a seedling of an idea for how you might stretch beyond the own box of your current giving models, because it's going to take all of us with all forms of capital, moving it in all sorts of ways to achieve the world that we're all dreaming of. So please do that. And I think we're going to share both Mindy and Maria's slides in Whova, so you guys can all look at that one more time and be more fully briefed in their models and their work, and as you inspire yourself to move your money differently. So thank you, you three. This was such a pleasure. This session, along with all of our other sessions, the recording will be up on Whova tomorrow or the next day. They go up quite quickly, so tell your friends to watch this session. We're so excited to name that Carmen, you are the winner of our book raffle, so we'll be in touch with you at the end of this session to fill out that. And next up in 10 minutes, we have our Learning Lab, which is looking at actual tech platforms for how some of this money can move in different ways. And you should just see on your screen right now a very quick 2-question poll about this session. So please fill that out. That helps us with our programming year over year. Thank you all and have a great day.